What's behind the nice guy syndrome is I just put it into five simple components. And as I'm developing this framework, what I realized was where we start off and where we end up. So integrated man is where we want to end up. And what I call him the secure man. The nice guy, I call him the fractured man, the fractured nice guy. The fractured nice guy has a lot of insecurities, and these show up especially around relationships. They might show up around money, wealth, social situations, and they definitely showed up a lot in my life as well. So might be needy, might not be comfortable in your own skin. So that's the fractured individual, the nice guy. And then you've got the secure, the integrated man who isn't perfect, but has all of his light and dark integrated. I'm just going to share with you some of the traits of the fractured man and also some of the traits of a secure man. So the fractured man versus secure man when dating. So this is my focus is usually around dating, attraction, masculinity. So even if you're in a relationship, married, long term, you can still apply these principles. So the difference between a fractured self is a wounded and undeveloped at his core. So this results in self-sabotaging behavior, whereas a secure is self-aware with a strong sense of self and is constantly developing and practicing self-improvements. A lot of men struggle, even though they're in a lot of personal development, is they are constantly masturbating on new content. Anyone ever stuck in that trap? You're constantly masturbating on new content. I need new information, need a new book. Let me go to another YouTube channel. I'm so guilty of this as well. I'm like, I need another book, or I need to really listen to another podcast, or I need to, consume something else. So what happens is that we become consumeraholics, and that is not how we actually change. What we're doing is we're just increasing our embodiment gap. So cognitively, we're really developing, but our practical development isn't there. So anyone relate to that? So we know exactly how to make money or lose weight, get the girl. We might cognitively know this, but we don't practically know this. So let's have a look at the differences between the fractured self and what I call the secure self. So the fractured self needs a relationship to be happy. So he's the kind of guy who puts his whole emphasis, his whole world, everything revolves around his relationship. If you're a father, I'm a father, I've got two kids, it might be that you're putting yourself completely, focus on the family. So the whole world, your central world is your emotional world is the relationship. Now, whereas a secure man, he drives his happiness within. He might be focused on his purpose, helping, community, self-validation, internal validation. So that's the difference between the secure one and the fractured one. So when things are not going well in the relationship, he wobbles. When there's a breakup, he's devastated. So look at the next one. So the fractured man attaches very fast after a date or two. So he starts fusing, he starts to get involved and attaches very quickly. Studies show that men are usually the first ones to say, I love you in a relationship. Anyone guilty of this? They said, I love you before even the woman's, I said, I love you. So they fuse really quickly. And they're like, oh my God, this is the one. I found the one. I really need to have her in my relationship. So they attach very quickly, fusing. Whereas a secure man, integrated man, takes his time. He's paced. He's not putting all his eggs in one basket. So, for example, there's a dating challenge. Dr. Glover does this as well, where you go on 12 dates with 12 different women. Simple challenge. And what you find is that guys tend to attach very quickly and they stop dating or finding a new dates and they fuse really quickly. And usually happens when you have a huge emotional fracture. So a fractured self is very insecure and needy. So it needs that attention. It's very needy for connection. When the connection is broken, it's hurt. Like the feminine, because it's usually fractured self. Nice guys are very much in their feminine. Whereas a secure one, manages insecurities. It doesn't mean that no one doesn't have insecurities, but it doesn't ruin his relationship. So he can manage himself well within the relationship. And again, it's a very difficult thing to do when our emotional brain kicks in. Another way a fractured man shows up, they put women on a pedestal. So not the women that they don't want, but the women they're really attracted to. she's incredibly hot, she's gorgeous, and they're thinking to themselves, oh, I don't deserve a girl like this. How did I get a girl like this? And then they're constantly insecure that she's going to leave him. And then he does everything he can to please her, not upset her, doesn't want her to be angry, avoids conflict. Whereas a secure person sees everyone as integrated, it's light and dark. So it doesn't put them on a pedestal, but also sees that they have flaws as well. So what happens is that when you see somebody with flaws, you're not so hungry, you're not so taken in by them. You don't have this halo effect, especially not just women, but it can happen with celebrities, high value, high status individuals as well. When nice guys fractured is that they're easily manipulated and pushed around. So he'll just cave in, whatever you want, whatever for the peace. I don't want to be hurt to be upset. I'll avoid conflict. Oh, here we go again. I don't want any of that. Whereas a secure self has strong boundaries and he enforces consequences. So if he says that he doesn't want something in his life to happen, he will have a boundary and there will be consequences and he'll activate those consequences. So he'll be very consistent in them, very clear in them. He'll communicate them and there'll be consequences. The 4 C's, I call it, when it comes to boundaries. So the next one is he's very self-conscious and insecure. So he's very needy. He keeps ruminating, overthinking. Am I doing it right? Am I saying the right things? Will they be upset? So he's very, he has what I call one of the fractures is the ego fracture. It's very sensitive towards criticism, feedback, in case he gets anything wrong. And perfectionism shows up in that way. So he's very much of a perfectionist because if I'm perfect, then nobody can judge me. Nobody can ridicule me. Nobody can put me down. Nobody can say something bad about me. And I'll look good. And so the ego fracture always wants to look good or come across strong. Whereas a secure self is comfortable in his own skin. He knows he's the integrated man. He has light and he's dark. He has an angry side as well. But it doesn't mean he's going around being angry at everybody. But he knows that there are some flaws in his life. And he's very comfortable with his flaws. He's got his light and his dark integrated, especially when it comes around to his sexual fracture. So sexually fractured men usually want to integrate that and they'll be afraid of, I don't want to come across creepy. I don't want to, people to have an insight into my needs and my desires. So just healing what I call the 5 masculine fractures, the nerve fracture, ego, emotional, sexual, and spiritual fracture enables you to build genuine confidence, attract healthy relationships and date with emotional stability, self-assurance, and a clear sense of purpose. So that's just a quick overview of the 5 fractures. So where in your life are you showing up fractured and where in your life are you showing up secure?